I think this thing, which doesn't actually exist as a thing, as a separate entity, but this process, it's actually a psychological process, it exists on a continuum. So you have ego at one end of the spectrum, which is the knot of reactivity born from the fight or flight system, which is totally concerned with me and the protection of me. And that's where war begins. And it's fine to protect the body. Yeah? It needs to be protected as we operate in the human, in 3D reality. But when we're talking about psychological protection, protecting myself psychologically from what I perceive to be an attack or an offense, then it becomes a knot of reactivity that keeps us in tightness, that keeps us in closure, keeps us in separation, and keeps us out of love, out of openness, out of tenderness. That's what we're attempting to release, if you like, in spirituality, on the spiritual path. But that's not the same as getting rid of the ego, because the ego on the other end of the spectrum is actually the sense of I, the sense of I am, our I amness. And that you cannot get rid of. You cannot operate without a sense of I-ness in this world whilst you're alive. It's impossible. So that primary sense of I, and I'm not talking about me, me with its story of victimhood and persecution and rejection and all this. I'm talking about simply the very pure sense of I-ness, that I am, which is really the root or the doorway into beingness. That's also ego. Yeah? But it's ego without the encrustation of its reactivity. Yeah? It can be a very pure response to life, to our relationship to life. So in that sense, we don't get rid of ego, we clean up ego, or we transmute ego. So ego becomes not the controller or the master, which it is when it's in that tight knot of reactivity. It becomes our master, it gets into the driving seat, and that's who we think we are, and that's the root of suffering and all the problems that we see in ourselves and in the world. But it cleans up, and in cleaning up, it falls into its rightful place. It becomes the servant. It becomes the servant of awakeness. It becomes the servant of light. It becomes the servant of love. It becomes the servant of presence. So in that sense, the ego is in its right place.